Right, we're back. It's been a bit of a long fucking time since I've made a video. I've been gone for a hot second, but we're fucking back here. And I gotta say, Assassin's Creed Odyssey made me lose my fucking mind. Assassin's Creed Odyssey, it's a bit of a weird fucking game, to be honest. And in fact, it was one of the weirdest games I've ever played. It's probably one of the weirdest experiences I've had with a game to date. It kept me between bored and interested through pretty much the whole thing. Like, I wasn't necessarily enjoying it, but I also wasn't really hating it either. It was kind of like some weird in-between stage where I didn't really know what the fuck was going on. I mean, yeah, of course there's gonna be good parts about the game, just like there is about any game, you know, it's to be expected. But this has got to be one of the most tiresome games I've ever had to endure. My main criticism of Assassin's Creed Odyssey isn't the seemingly half-assed storyline, it's not the borrowed RPG mechanics, and it's not the game's incessant determination to keep crashing when I'm trying to fucking complete a quest. No. My main criticism of Assassin's Creed Odyssey is that it's too fucking long. Yeah, I'm well aware there's thousands of people that have already completed the game. Obviously, by this point, it's been out for 2 months. And there's probably people that have completed the game multiple times over. There's probably people that completed it within the first week of the game's release. But if I'm going to critique an Assassin's Creed game, I'm going to do it right. I've experienced pretty much everything this game has to offer. That means completing it on the hardest difficulty, collecting every legendary armor and weapon, completing an extensive array of side quests, killing all of the optional animals, fully upgrading the Adrestia, fucking all of that shit I've done. So I'd say I'm pretty qualified to critique this game. I've played the living fuck out of this game. And I know how Assassin's Creed fans can be. You know, when I critique their beloved Ubisoft or their favourite game franchise, they'll be like, you didn't give the game a chance. So, I gave the game way more than a chance. So I made sure that I couldn't be called out for not giving this game a chance. Anyway, without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, I present to you my full review of Assassin's Creed Odyssey. I may be a bit late, but it's better late than never. And I know a lot of people have been waiting to hear me critique this game, so let's get straight fucking into this. Assassin's Creed Odyssey was, as I've said before, the game that literally no one asked for at all. Yeah, I know we wanted a game in ancient Greece. We got that. Fair play, Ubisoft. You've supplied on that front with the setting and the time period. But we were all kind of hoping that maybe you would have carried on the story of your protagonist from the previous game, Bayek, instead of making new protagonists for literally no reason. There was no point for it at all, to be honest. You could have just made a game in ancient Greece with Bayek, but instead you decided to go back hundreds of years when you didn't even necessarily need to. Anyway, instead we got this game where you can play as male or female, Alexios or Cassandra. I chose Cassandra because 1, she's the canon character, and 2, because her acting isn't as bad as Alexios' acting. Like, Cassandra's is still bad, but Alexios just sounds like he's holding in the most ungodly shit in the Assassin's Creed franchise, and this franchise is full of shit enough as it is. Cassandra also just fits the hero role to me personally more than Alexios does, although it's all down to personal preference really, and it's not like it even makes a difference remotely to the experience of the game. It's just you can either play as a man or a woman. There's no difference between the two. I found myself playing Assassin's Creed Odyssey and just wishing it was something else. Like, the game just felt forced as hell, even for Assassin's Creed. The franchise has seen such better days. Even after the new clean slate, it's almost like Quebec just wanted to smear the fuck out of the respect that Assassin's Creed Origins had gained for Ubisoft and for the Assassin's Creed franchise. Although I don't think Assassin's Creed Odyssey is completely terrible, there are some positive things about the game. You see, the thing is with Assassin's Creed Odyssey, the things that Assassin's Creed Origins did well, Odyssey does even better, such as the combat, the skill tree, the weapons, the upgrading system, the environments, and all of these things in Assassin's Creed Odyssey were actually betterly done than in Assassin's Creed Origins. However, the things that Origins did badly, Odyssey does completely worse, such as the lackluster story, the shoehorned in modern day, the boring side quests, and to top it all off, the even bigger fucking map. Like, Ubisoft, I get your love for big open worlds, I really do, I really do, but please next time, just don't make it unnecessarily big, please. One of the main reasons why the game took me so long to complete was because it took me so long to get from each quest in the main storyline, or it took me so long to get to each cultist. I had to fast travel across the map for the majority of the game, and it was so fatiguing, it was awful. Ubisoft, bigger doesn't mean better. I know you may think this, I know you think having the biggest open world means you've got the best game, but it really fucking doesn't. It actually makes the experience so much less enjoyable, so much less streamlined. Well, I mean, at least the open world is pretty, you know. Not too dissimilar to Origins, to be honest. It's, the open world in Odyssey is actually quite fucking beautiful. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. Even if Ubisoft do have a ton of scummy business practices, like an overabundance of bollocks paid DLC, terrible online services, games made for the sake of profit, and generally little respect left in the gaming industry, they do know how to make a right fucking good looking open world, like, I'm not gonna lie. And I'd argue that ancient Greece is actually better looking than ancient Egypt from Assassin's Creed Origins. It is a really beautiful open world. I think Greece is just a lot more diverse, and as a plus, there's just less areas of random dead land like there was in Assassin's Creed Origins. Now, I know that's what Egypt was like, but I think Greece just works a lot better as an RPG as what they were going for Assassin's Creed Origins. Don't get me wrong, Origins is leagues better than Assassin's Creed Odyssey, 100%. But I think the open world in Odyssey is actually better than the open world in Assassin's Creed Origins, and it's just a right shame that the rest of the game isn't up to par. Assassin's Creed Odyssey suffers from the same problem that so many open world games over the last 10 years have suffered from, and I hate to sound like a broken record, but the side content just isn't good enough. The map is huge, so you'd expect tons of amazing side content to come with that, but sadly, it's as lazy as ever. Obviously, with a map this big, it's going to be a lot harder to try and fill it with content, but it got to the point where the same activities are just recycled on the same islands over and over and over again. It gets to the point where each island consists of going to an alpha animal's lair and killing it, going to a bandit camp and completing that, looting sunken treasure, looting chests, and doing the same things over and over and over again on each island repeatedly. I appreciate the attempt to fill this huge open world with content because Origins had the same problem, and so many other games over the last 10 years have suffered from this as well, but the content just isn't good enough. I feel like a remedy to this is just making the map smaller. Like, that would make it so much easier to fill it with content. You don't need a map so big. Now, this isn't necessarily the problem of the content itself, because taking out a military camp with complete stealth or fighting a boss that is highly skilled can be very fun. But it's when this content is copy and pasted on a map over and over again that is simply far too big, it raises some serious repetition issues. I know Ubisoft's love for making huge maps in games is incessant. However, I feel that Assassin's Creed Odyssey is simply far too big. Like, it's such a fucking big game, and it could have been so much more streamlined and nice if they would have made the map just a little bit smaller. Maybe a lot smaller, because Assassin's Creed Odyssey is fucking way too big. And the game could have been so much more streamlined if they didn't insist on making it so massive. Like, I get the feat of recreating a country, but maybe, just maybe, it's not very practical. The map size affected my general interest in the game too. I found myself getting insanely bored halfway through traveling to the next quest, which made even playing the main story very, very tiresome. Like, traveling constantly just isn't fun. So the game consisted of me fast traveling around, trying to experience everything the game had to offer, whilst also maintaining a steady pace during the main story. A story which I had no incentive to play in the first place, because it just isn't very good. Now here comes the point in the video where I have to try and critique the game's strange, convoluted, forced narrative, so bear with me because it is a lot to get through. So the game starts, and you're casually getting along with everyday life on Kefalonia Island, which for some reason has a massive statue of Zeus on it, which never was there and isn't there in real life. It's kind of funny though, because they added like a massive stone cock to the statue of Zeus, so it fits in with all of the other massive cocks that you can climb on in Assassin's Creed Odyssey. It's like a game feature. This statue that doesn't even exist, they were like, yeah, slap a dick on there, that'll fucking sort you right out. Now in the first scene where you first meet Cassandra, technically, it starts off with a fight, which is pretty much how every first scene in Assassin's Creed game starts. There's always a starting fight scene, because you need to kill someone. It's Assassin's Creed! You've got to fucking kill someone! Anyway, after being introduced to all the necessary introductory characters like Marcos, Phoebe, and Barnabas, you then set sail for Megaris, where you've been assigned by a suspicious man to kill the Wolf of Sparta, none other than your own father. Spoiler alert though, it's not your real father, it's just some bloke your mum was shagging. Your real father is Pythagoras, who's been in a cave for hundreds of years, and he discovered Atlantis, and there's this staff that's been keeping him alive. I don't really know why Pythagoras is your dad. Like, it doesn't really serve any purpose at all. It's just kind of there and kind of shoehorned in at the end. It makes no sense at all, to be honest. Anyway, I chose not to kill my father because he seemed pretty sound in the cutscenes that I saw of him, and I had really no reason to actually kill him. Apart from maybe the fact that he threw me and baby Alexios off of a fucking cliff. That cutscene was pretty harrowing, but I really didn't care, because I didn't know any of these characters, so like, I just kind of sat there and watched as this family's life was completely torn apart in front of me. This section would have been much more effective if there was playable sections during the beginning of the game where you get to play as Cassandra when she's a child and train with your father or bond with your mother, kind of like the sections at the beginning of Assassin's Creed Unity where you play as young Arno. This would have allowed us to get a feel of the family's happy life before it was all torn apart and ruined. It's just a suggestion. It definitely would have been a lot better than showing the few short cutscenes that show, like, the father training child cliche scene. Like, come on Ubisoft, let's at least pretend that we're creative. So instead of killing the Wolf of Sparta, aka my adopted father, I decided to pull the 1-2 switcheroony on the dude that told me to kill him and kill him instead. Just because he kind of seemed like a bit of a prick, really. He was a really slimy fucking man, so I was just like, I'll just kill him. Luckily for me, it turns out he's part of an ancient cult called the Cult of Cosmos, which are basically fucking with the Greek world and starting loads of wars, so that's a pretty good fucking result. Turns out later along in the story that you're actually the granddaughter of Leonidas, and that's why you inherited the Spear of Leonidas, which is actually a First Civ artifact. So then you begin your quest to go and collect your father, mother, and brother for a long-awaited family reunion. This quest to find your family takes you all over the Greek world, like the mountains of Sparta, the bustling streets of Athens, or even the high seas. You do a lot of shit during this game. And I mean a lot of shit. You end up exiling a king, single-handedly winning the Olympic Games, ending the Peloponnesian War, and finding the lost city of Atlantis, as well as fighting the Minotaur, fighting Medusa, and doing a general bunch of weird shit that makes the game just all that slightly more jarring. It's like with every game, the first Civilization shit just gets weirder and weirder. Like with Origins we had pharaohs rising out of the ground, and in Odyssey, well, we have this. And to top the whole story of the game off, the modern day was complete and utter shite. Especially the ending. You thought the Origins modern day was terribly written and shoehorned in just to keep hardcore fans happy? Well, wait until you play the Odyssey modern day, where you could take the whole thing out and we would lose nothing. You probably gain something. Like the time we spent playing that terrible excuse for a modern day. Seriously, Layla's terrible. She's not even a character, and all she does is say dumb shit. All the fucking assassins in the modern day are terrible as well. And I know a lot of you won't understand this, and probably a lot of you really enjoy the modern day of the new Assassin's Creed games. I don't know how you do, but I know there's going to be some of you that do. And I'm almost 100% certain there's going to be someone commenting on the video that's going to be like, don't criticize the modern day, you just don't fucking understand it. But when I say the modern day of Assassin's Creed Odyssey is shit, I mean, it is absolute shite. And if I could take it out of the game, if I could go into the game files and take it out, I would happily do that, because it's an abomination of storytelling. The thing is with the story of Assassin's Creed Odyssey is it's a bit like a huge wild goose chase. The game just consists of you finding things. Go here, find this. Go here and sort something out for someone so they can help you with your main quest. It's like you start a quest which will then start other quests which will have their own quests. And sometimes this can be a really good way of padding out story and content in a game, and making you feel like you're actually making progress towards some greater goal. But in Odyssey, the content of the missions is so limited to the game's mechanics that it sort of feels like every mission ends up being pretty much the same, consisting of the same objectives. At a point, I just ended up not listening to the game's audio at all outside of cutscenes and just doing something else while I was playing the game. It really got that mind-numbingly boring. And that's not a good sign. When playing a game, you want to get immersed. You don't want to have to do something else on the side to entertain yourself just to get through it. The ending of the game was also absolutely abysmal. After you've killed the Cult of Cosmos, reunited your family, and opened the gates of Atlantis as Cassandra, which all took me far too long to do, you then must venture to Greece as Layla. And of course, you know, going to the same place that you went to in the historical time period as Alexius or Cassandra as Layla is always a cool thing to see. You run through the same areas, climb over the same objects, some collapsed because of the passing of time, and then you eventually end up in the main temple area. Right, this moment could have been actually good. It could have been a good modern day ending and could have actually led to something. But no, out of the shadows walks Cassandra. Yes, 2,500-year-old Cassandra that has been kept alive by the staff of Hermes since we left her in the Animus. Only for some reason this time she's wearing fucking business attire. Literally for no reason. Which means at some point she had to walk out, go buy a suit, and be a functioning member of society with the staff of Hermes always on her. So she must have been walking about with this huge ass piece of Eden on her back and no one noticed at all. So she went and bought this suit, literally waving about a piece of Eden, and then crawled back into her cave to wait for Layla. Obviously, she didn't spend 2,000 years in that cave. She obviously did other things, but she did specifically buy that suit for her meeting with Layla, and I think that's fucking hilarious. You can see that Quebec were really trying to emulate the ending scene of Revelations, where, you know, Ezio acknowledges Desmond, and Ezio, Altair, and Desmond are all kind of in the same room interacting in a way. The difference between these two endings is the ending of Revelations was built up over the course of 4 individual games, and were written by creative geniuses with so much ambition like Darby McDevitt. The ending to Odyssey was clearly written by a team of writers that have no idea what a good narrative is. But I digress. I've given up. I've given up critiquing the writing of Assassin's Creed these days because it's all over the fucking place. In the end, I was just glad to be rid of the game. And the funny thing is, the ending of Assassin's Creed Odyssey probably would have been better if it wasn't for that terrible excuse for a modern day ending. But alas, when do Ubisoft ever get anything right with Assassin's Creed these days? For what it is, Assassin's Creed Odyssey is actually a pretty fun action-adventure RPG. It has really fun, smooth flowing combat, which is actually challenging on higher difficulties. It has good weapon and armor progression, and actually surprisingly good naval, even though it's nothing compared to Assassin's Creed 4. In fact, I think gameplay-wise, one of the only things that was done badly is the fact that enemies have way too much health. Take the Catalonian boar boss battle for example. I was the right level for the fight, had pretty good gear for my level, and even went through the effort of applying engravings to my weapons that meant I did 15% more damage to animals and did more fire damage, and the boss still took 15 minutes worth of fighting to kill. No boss should take that long, especially with the design that these bosses have. They possess like 4 normal attacks and 1 main charge attack, and they just cycle through these animations randomly. There aren't really any phases to these bosses either, it's just kind of attacking a massive sponge that may or may not one-shot you. Now, I know I did play this on the hardest difficulty, but I've had people telling me that even on the easier difficulties, enemies are still huge damage sponges, so I'll chalk this down to bad judgment when it comes to enemy health on Ubisoft's part. Maybe sort that out in the next one. Apart from that though, the rest of the activities and side content to take part in the open world are actually quite fun. Things like the gladiator arena, mythical bosses, the weapon and armor customization, skill progression, and tomb raiding were all pretty fun things to do in between quests. It may be a bit repetitive and it isn't the best quality content, but mindless fun when used right can actually enhance a game's experience in the long run, and I think overall it has in Assassin's Creed Odyssey. In conclusion to my ramblings about Assassin's Creed Odyssey, it's a game that feels like it has no place in the Assassin's Creed franchise. It's not really an Assassin's Creed game. Yeah, they may have shown clips of Ezio in Venice or Connor running through the frontier, but it's nothing to do with Assassin's Creed. The game resembles nothing of Assassin's Creed. And I'm not even talking about the change in direction in gameplay or storytelling, because that's all fine. It's just the game has nothing to do with Assassin's Creed anymore. I mean, at least Origins kept some aspects of the Assassin's Creed franchise, like Hidden Blades, Templars, and Assassins. Assassin's Creed Odyssey could literally be titled Odyssey and could pass off as a new IP. Odyssey is the game that not one of us asked for. Yes, it may be the setting that we asked for, and yes, it may be a fleshed out RPG world that we asked for, but it's not the game that we asked for. It's a game that clearly doesn't know what it is, and it seems like the developers didn't know what they wanted it to be either. So it's just kind of left there to be the forgotten, disabled younger brother of Assassin's Creed Origins. God bless Ashraf Ismail.